Well, we're going to move on to Weir and the wavefibremill. Weir is a clothing designer, wool mill owner and operator, and freelance community developer in Seguin, Ontario, and that's near Parry Sound on the shores of Georgian Bay. Her designs are simple, classic, unstructured pieces that are meant to showcase the fabric, last for years, and accommodate body changes. Looking for a quantity and quality of local natural fiber and materials for her clothing line, Wave came face to face with the limitations and bottlenecks in wool processing being felt by small sheep farms in the area. Actually, that's a global story. Most are forced to sell their annual harvest of raw fleece to the wool growers co-op, to be shipped offshore or to destroy it. And the cost of transport from the farm is more than what will be realized by the sale of it. Living in an area desperately in need of permanent year-round employment, Wave decided to start a fiber processing mill in her small community, purchasing vintage equipment from a retired business. Wave has established a semi-worsted spinning and weaving mill, providing added processing services for area farmers, as well as purchasing raw material from regenerative farms to be used in an ever-growing possibility of product. Of course, I had to have Wave here, being a partner in crime with promoting wool. And I know how extremely difficult it is to set up a wool world. And she has accomplished this with incredible grace, humility, and extreme care for locality. So thank you, Wave, for being here. And the basket is yours.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. And I am incredibly honored to have been invited to share what our little community project is and where we're going with it. We are about a year into it, although the planning has been much longer. So I will take you through a little bit about who and where I am, again, the idea of place, a little bit of what I'm doing and why, and then a bit about some of the beliefs that sort of, sort of keep me doing what I'm doing, I guess. So I think you guys have the video. If you want to start that, that would be great. Okay. So I'm one of three sisters raised in a small island in the bush by artist parents, Bert Weir and Elena Zebrowski Weir. We saw our parents creating works of art, as well as directing their lives in such a way that their skills supported us and raised us. We had freedom to explore, create. If we wanted something, we had all of the materials of an art studio available to us, and we just figured out how to make it. We eventually moved to the city, became summer people, but spent our weekends in the bush. And I think this creative foundation of exploration is sort of what developed our character, and both sisters too are artists, one in textiles and the other in clay and paint. The area where I was born and have always returned to is the shores of Georgian Bay, just inside the limits of Northern Ontario. My birth village of McKellar and Seguin, the current site of my business, are both just outside of the town of Parry Sound. And so much of my life has been defined by the rocks, water, and trees of this area. And even though we're not far from a major population centers, there's a sense that nature is still fully in control. Although beautiful and accessible, statistically, This is one of the most economically depressed areas in Ontario. Due to the rocky terrain, industrial farming could not take hold. Farms tend to be small and diversified, more suited to grazing animals than crops. Historically, the fields grew hay to feed the horses in the lumber industry. Sheep were raised, and in the village of McKellar, there was a wool and spinning and weaving mill tucked in behind the water-powered lumber mill. There are still wool blankets and private collections, and in the local museum that were farmed and produced here. An avid home economics student, I always sewed what I wanted to wear. And realizing that perhaps this skill could in fact support me, I started Wave Handmade, a natural fiber clothing company while living in Nova Scotia. At the time, I imported my natural and organic fabric and yarn used to produce my garments. I designed for me. I want simple, classic, unstructured garments, timeless. They let me move. They let me change shape and size. I want plastic free. I want socially, environmentally, and economically responsible clothing, something that showcases the fabric and fibers that it's made from. So selling the business in Nova Scotia, returning to Ontario and the island cabin, I never imagined that I would embrace clothing design again. Instead, I purchased a small property, farmed, gardened, taught pioneer skills, and involved myself in community development and politics. So how'd that work? 20 years later, I again decided to reopen my clothing company, determined that this time the materials that I would use would go beyond natural and organic and include local, so that they would be from within my fiber shed. So surely after 20 years, I figured the world had passed me by and I would be able to find all that I needed on every street corner, and certainly and any village and studio. So these are some of the images. The what you're seeing, most of the wool that you're seeing now is hand woven from Ontario fleece. We are now going beyond that with our own looms, and so we will be going beyond the small individual looms. So my search for local product and producers brought me to Upper Canada Fiber Shed. So that is an association which is an affiliate of the International Fiber Shed Association, which has been started in California by Rebecca Burgess. Becoming involved with designing and facilitating a public roundtable conference, I became aware of the difficulties facing the meat producing farmers, any farms with fiber. Mostly raising sheep for wool, for meat. Wool is the byproduct by nature of the fact that sheep need shearing every year. To sell the fleece, farmers must take their wool to the co-op, as you had mentioned, and the co-op in turn sells it offshore. At the time, the price was 15 cents a pound, and with some farmers not even being paid that if their wool was not sold on consignment. And again, the cost of transport sometimes surpassed the possible income they could get from the fleece. And so the farmers are left to burn or compost the raw fleece. If anybody's tried to burn wool or get it to break down in your garden, you know exactly that that's not an easy job. Farmers who want to create a value-added product from their own farm produce are met with a bottleneck in processing. There are several small on-farm woolen mills and an excellent semi-worsted spinning mill here in the province, but it's just not enough. The wait time can be literally years for processing. And we know that sheep are sheared annually, and so you can realize how that problem is compounded. It's a matter of capacity, and the demand is presently far outstripping the facilities' ability to keep up. The farmers that do get their fleece to a mill may be going long distances, even out of province, and may not get their own fleece back in their product. So it could contain any number of breeds or farms, but the increase in raising fiber animals, alpaca becoming very popular, this bottleneck is more pronounced. So I started adding things up. One, I wanted volume, quality, local fiber from regenerative farms. Two, there are farms and there's lots of fleece. Three, there's a bottleneck in processing. Four, I'm in an economically depressed area. And five, I'm not the only one looking for sustainable, local, responsible products. So of course, what do? Let's just start a spinning mill. And so that's where how I got to there. I'd first thought that I too would start a small woolen mill, but with each obstacle placed in my path, kind of like water, when rocks are thrown in the river, water just kind of flows around, finds another route. And that's what happened with me. The majority of my difficulties were trying to establish a location. And after about 2 years, thoroughly discouraged, I figured I had to try once more. So literally, sight unseen, I bought a semi-worsted spinning mill comprised of vintage equipment from a retiring couple. The past owners had spent about 2 decades searching out, building, compiling a complete spinning mill. And some of the equipment here it's nearing 100 years in production. So it terrified me. I had no idea what I was doing, but it was one of those now or never, all or nothing moments. And you wonder, wow. Anyway, I jumped. So this project has captured the imagination of many, and we've actually been able to find people instrumental in one, getting it moved. That was 2 full transport trucks. Getting it wired, getting it safe for the modern world. And we're finding quite a wonderful, capable workforce of young people, energetic, keen on learning and expanding skills in an occupation that has literally been all but thrown out of our country. At one time, as well as countless small woolen mills, there were 100 flax mills here in Ontario alone. So now not a flax mill in sight, but we are seeing the return of some of the smaller on-farm woolen mills. So we see our mill as playing a part in the return as well as the development of a local natural fiber textile industry. Although still considered small, our mill has a greater capacity than many of the farm mills, a fact that which we hope will allow more local farms to realize value added for their fleece. So to the spinning mill, we have added felt making equipment, dyeing equipment, 2 industrial Dobie looms. We have a selection of small knitting machines, an assortment of sewing machines. And so quite literally, a garment can go from raw fleece to finished product all under one roof. So we have a 40-mile sweater and a 25-mile sock with the fleece coming from our local villages. As well as working in-house, we have begun to engage artisans in the local cottage industry to fabricate our products, allowing us to support other entrepreneurs, at-home moms, retirees, so people that can work out of their homes. We use a facility to host workshops, ensuring that skills are not lost, as well as creating a skill base for us from which to draw. It also provides incomes for facilitators who can share their skills. We're receiving great interest in a local textile guild or creative cooperative. We just put out some call to invite for that. Hand looms, spinning wheels, dye equipment, books are all available for teaching and for use by the public. So, if you want to learn something, you want to try a loom, we are offering the use of our equipment. Down the road are planned events and festivals. We want to create a hub for the makers and creators in our community. This is not a new model, and it's well documented that economic independence follows the artists. Artists by necessity tend to move into the cheapest, and we'll translate that to the most rundown and undesirable properties available. And then they start to create. They create beauty, they create interesting, colorful, musical, tasty businesses. Soon everybody wants to be there and the area blossoms. Ironically, sometimes so successfully that the artist has to move on to another community to again stabilize. But that's our idea of bringing the arts here. It's from here, everything will be built. Here you see some of our workshop materials with our wool roving. To me, I find these piles of things just so incredibly beautiful. This is sweetgrass basket making. Some of the workshops that are happening. We don't restrict our workshops to textile. We've had spoon making, basket making, soap making. So whatever skills there are, we want to share. I'm a believer in the donut or circle model of economics, what the indigenous cultures of the world have been telling us since time began, to think in circles. Who decided that economic growth needs to start at the bottom left corner of a page and proceed to the top right, not pausing at the corner, but at going to infinity? And then why did we agree to follow that? That's another discussion, I think. The idea behind a donut economy is that we do what it takes for a community to thrive, but a community that thrives within the bands of the circle. So no one's falling through the hole without basic needs, and no one's jumping off the edge beyond what the finite resources of our planet can sustain. So if we start to illustrate the connections between us and all that we touch, it was an exercise I did for a presentation, we find a multi-layered web developing, not a line, not a bar graph, not a chart. The diagram of connections in a healthy community is mapped out like the diagrams we see of the connections of the neurons in our brain. So to me, that suggests that together we form one big brain. So this certainly has become the time of times. What is it that keeps me doing what I do? Although I did make a conscious decision to see where my limits lay, I find it mostly an unanswerable question, because like most creative people, you just can't not do it. So the part that I can answer, though, is what keeps me doing what I do, and that's hope. Absolutely, it's hope. And so how do I find hope or hold on to it in these times? It's not easy. It really isn't. When I'm struggling, I'm terrified, I'm unsure, I very deliberately turn my thoughts and attention to the doers of the world. It's who I call the doers. And just knowing they're there fills me with calm. Maybe because I was named Wave, my metaphors are often tend to be about water. But when you look at the ocean or the Great Lakes, there's all this flotsam and jetsam floating around on top. The debris bobbing along on the surface. It's getting crashing on the shore. It's getting caught and dragged around the nets. It's fouling the beaches. But go below the surface. So deep in that quiet, sort of solitude. That's, for me, that's where the doers are. The doers are just kind of quietly doing, creating beauty, creating community, economic stability, family. And I believe that the debris on the top changes. It moves, it goes, but the doers are constant. And so they simply do because it needs doing. And that's kind of the thing, the thread that holds me steady. So, and what I'm finding empowering now, instead of working in isolation, it's initiatives like this event and others that are connecting the doers. And we're finding that we're not alone. we're actually part of the world that creates and stabilizes, the part that does because it needs doing. And I believe that the majority of the world wants to live in harmony and wants to pass the next 7 generations to their children. I believe that most people want to thrive and realize there's no thriving outside the limits of our planet, be able to support and sustain us. So humans create beauty. We embellish everything. Our garments, our houseware, our buildings, our community spaces, our bodies. Every culture has a textile, an embroidery, a woven sash, a stitched vest, a shirt, a cloak, a hat that represents who and where we are in the world. And for me, if you want to bring a diverse peoples together, I firmly believe that you put us in a room together with a pile of needles and thread and yarn and fabric and dough and clay and paint, and we will stitch and tell stories, we will sing and cook, we will teach and learn and wonder at the diversity. At the moment, everywhere we are developing aromatherapy, sound therapy, touch therapy, dance therapy, light therapy, art therapy, theater therapy, need I go on? And all of this is to replace the arts, which we've thrown right out of our schools. We've thrown out of, what we say is valuable in our communities. And now we have to figure out the therapy to replace all that. But anyway, we can go on for hours. So the arts are what return us to harmony, and harmony is what returns us to health. And so I see, so the fabric mill has many, many layers. There's the practical and the feeding of farms, the clothing of us, the, jobs and community, but it goes, for me, way beyond that, and deeper and broader on, and it gathers people together to stitch, share, teach, and learn. And we sit working together with our hands, and we learn to give with our hearts. So what does the future look like for the fiber mill? It's already in the past year gone way beyond our expectations. Farmers are finding us. We have tons, literally, of local fleece. We're ramping up our product development. We're hiring workers. People are gathering to create and learn. I see the woolen mill as a foundation on what to build community. Already needing elbow room. We're exploring how to house the expansion. And wavefibremill is just one small initiative among millions on the world scale. But I do believe what it represents is universal. I believe that which is happening here is happening the world over. And it's simply the reclamation of humanity. Very simple, yet empowering. So that's us. This is who we are, what we are, why we do what we do. And yeah, feel welcome. Come by, make contact. If you're in the neighborhood, here we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Wave.